North Korean soldiers are learning how to pilot these type of drones, how to assemble them, and how to manage them. Apart from soldiers fighting this war, there's also a lot of information simply on the web. Russians have a plan to bring up their capacity to the point where they can launch up to 500 UAVs at once. All the Shahed and Geran and Gerbera launches haven't broken the Ukrainian will, haven't broken their spirit, have not broken their society, have not broken their industry or military or the larger civilian space and the environment. NATO armies are not ready for the intensity of drone warfare experienced in Ukraine. Full stop and mic drop.
This is Dan Magy, CEO of Firestorm, and this week on the DroneWorks podcast, we have Sam Bendett, one of the foremost experts in open source information regarding the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Sam, thanks for joining us again.
Glad to be here.
All right, man. So it's been a crazy week in the open source intel world when it comes to UAVs, UUVs, and USVs, right? I'm sure I'm missing an unmanned ground vehicle too, a UGV. But that being said, what are some of the interesting things you've seen in the last couple of weeks, either from tactics or new technologies that everyone are talking about?
So with respect to the emerging assault tactics in Ukraine and with respect to what Russians and Ukrainians are doing, so this has come up over the last couple of weeks, but it's an interesting tactic that the Russians are trying out. Basically, they've been attacking with small assault units in order to avoid larger casualties. They move fast, they can hide. If they can't hide and they're killed, the assault unit is not large and therefore can be easily replaced by another assault unit. But a lot of these movements have been observed and tracked by Russian ISR UAVs. And then the assault unit's actions were supported by FPV drones. What we have seen in Russian Telegram channels and in Russian writing is that some of these assault units now carry their FPVs with them. Mm-hmm. They advance as close as possible to the Ukrainian position. Mm-hmm. And then they take these FPV drones out of the backpack, they switch them on, and then the operators for those UAVs, which are located far in the rear, take over. And they pilot these FPVs at Ukrainian positions with minimal warning for the Ukrainian defenders because those FPVs just have to overcome a few hundred meters, maybe even less sometimes.
Right. So basically, they're moving the launch forward. They're still signal relaying the pilots because the pilots are, incredibly valuable. I mean, every human life is valuable, but like in this conflict, that's like a really high value target. And then they begin their assault, right? So fascinating. And are they finding success with this?
So they just, from my understanding, they just started doing that. Or maybe they've been doing it for a while. We haven't seen a lot of videos of that. Mm-hmm. We're seeing a lot of writings. But ultimately, as Russians advance in these very small contingents and they claw back Ukrainian territory just a few hundred meters at a time, maybe even less over the course of a day or a week, I would say these tactics are they probably have a mixed result. But where they are successful, they probably can be very successful because, again, there's only minimal warning for the defenders to engage these incoming drones. And where they're unsuccessful, again, these are small groups which are easily replaceable. And I think overlapping with that is another interesting tactic, or at least a concept, which has been communicated to us by Ukrainian intelligence in the public domain. I think it's been written about either in the Washington Post or New York Times paper recently. And that is the North Koreans are learning Russian drone tactics.
Yep.
North Korean soldiers are learning how to pilot these type of drones, how to assemble them, and how to manage them. And the Ukrainians actually communicated their concern that the North Korean soldiers taking that experience back to them is going to transform the North Korean military because they learn fast, they have very tough discipline, and they're willing to integrate. And this is on top of the recent news, I think from a month ago or 2 months ago, where I think Russian sources claimed, or I think Korean sources claimed that North Koreans and Russians are going to manufacture drones jointly, probably loading munition types, maybe simple fixed-wing UAVs, or anything tactical that North Koreans can use and build in very large numbers.
Yeah, so we had some pilots and trainers from Ukraine in the office a couple weeks ago, and they told us a number of the North Koreans, after they've killed them, they've gone through their stuff and they've found notebooks full of tactics, right? Notebooks full of how to assemble this, how to deploy these things. And so they're like, if these are the ones that we're finding, the knowledge has already gone back to North Korea. It makes total sense.
Yeah, and this is something that you and I talked about last time too,
right?
About the proliferation of this knowledge and integration of this knowledge amongst the willing parties, right?
Yep.
Because there are, apart from soldiers fighting this war, there's also a lot of information simply on the web. And a willing individual or groups of individuals or well-supported individuals or well-motivated individuals can learn and get that information on the internet and start assembling these drones, start modifying them, maybe get someone who's technically proficient to help them out, to turn those simple UAVs into basically your own private air force. I mean, this is a concern, and we're witnessing that amongst other militaries around the world,
right,
around non-state actors, terrorist organizations, drug cartels, and the like, which are starting to modify their operations with tactical quadcopters and tactical combat drones.
Drone Wars is recorded from Firestorm's global headquarters in San Diego, California. Each episode is filmed inside our X-Cell, a modular industrial-grade manufacturing facility designed to be deployed anywhere in the world within 24 hours for on-demand drone production. Each week on the podcast, we bring you cutting-edge insights from unmanned industry leaders. Listen as they share the breakthroughs and technologies they're working on, the hard lessons they've learned, and the bold predictions about what the next 5 to 10 years in unmanned systems and advanced manufacturing have in store for us. Enjoying the show so far? Then be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show. Let's take a step back here. Let's say the war in Ukraine ends in the next 6 months, right? And the Russian capacity to build shaheeds, like I talked about this online about a week ago, right? This time last year, for the month of February in 2024, they used something like 350 drones. Okay, in the entire month of February, they used 3,000, almost 3,000 flat, right? So the manufacturing capacity is there. If there's a pause in the conflict, if the conflict goes hot again, I mean, could we be seeing like legitimately tens of thousands of drones just being thrown at all of Eastern Europe? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So Russians have a plan to bring up their capacity to the point where they can launch up to 500 UAVs at once at the Ukrainians each time they launch their drones and missiles.
Okay.
So like you just said, apart from maybe a few dozen drones accompanying a few missiles or a few dozen missiles, each salvo is going to have 500 UAVs, and it's going to feature combat UAVs. It's going to feature decoy UAVs. Yep. It's going to feature accompanying ISR drones. That's per salvo. So it is entirely possible for Russia to bring up its capacity to the point where they have many, many thousands of these UAVs. The original plan for the Alabaga plant, when it was announced, I think in Western media in 2023, was to manufacture 6,000 UAVs.
Yep.
So they have gone well beyond that point,
right,
in attempting to develop something that will ultimately try to break Ukrainians, because all the Shahed and Geran and Gerbera launches haven't broken the Ukrainian will, haven't broken their spirit, have not broken their society, have not broken their industry or military or the larger civilian space and the environment, right? There's been a lot of damage, but it hasn't really had an effect, the desired effect. Russians are thinking if they launch more and more UAVs this time, maybe it will have a desired effect, because it will really strain the Ukrainian defenders, because it's one thing to defend against a few dozen Shaheeds. It's another to defend against 500. And Europe is not ready. And so the commander of the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces was recently quoted in a Reuters article, I believe yesterday or the day before, in which he literally said that NATO armies are not ready for the intensity of drone warfare experienced in Ukraine. Full stop and mic drop.
Yep. I read that, and it's interesting. I mean, if you look at how they defend against these attacks, right? It's a combination. They ground everything except for helicopters, right? That go and try and shoot them down. They use EW, and then they actually have a bunch of anti-aircraft, either, kinetic solutions like shooting from the ground, or even they're testing some missiles
in place.
Exactly. So they have a network of sensors to be able to identify the sound, right? And then they can triangulate where it's coming. But I think we haven't yet seen. I think it was 2 Sundays ago they did their largest attack ever. They sent about 300 to 350 in one night.
Right.
I think a couple dozen made it through kind of that web, but I don't think we've seen, again, 500 per salvo. I mean, what if they get up to using a couple thousand a night? These numbers are incredible that they could potentially get to. And Ukraine has had the chance to and Ukraine's had the chance to adapt to this. Do you know what I mean? My question to you though is let's say Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania are now a target. I mean, you could wipe out kind of the entire infrastructure in those countries in a matter of days using waves of attacks, right?
If there's no defenses, if there's no preparation, if there's no training, if there's no understanding of this threat at the political level, at the military level, at the ground civilian level. And although there's plenty of information in Western Europe about drone warfare in Ukraine, there's plenty of contacts with the Ukrainian military. It's not clear that the European establishment writ large fully understands what that threat can be and what must be done to counter this threat with respect to funding, investment, technological capabilities, and fielding of different types of systems in a layered formation. Sensors, electronics intelligence, jamming, kinetic abilities, and physical protection.
Sam, what do you think about Poland's they're building their own Maginot Line, right? It's going to be a high-tech wall. Do you think that goes far enough? Is there enough information to make a judgment call at this point? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know what the Polish military is actually saying. Obviously, a lot of these discussions are going to be had at the classified level in Poland, but Poland is as close to Ukrainian war as imaginable.
Right.
And I think Poland has a good understanding of the threat level.
Yeah.
And obviously, Poland supplies Ukraine with its warmate loading munition. So there's a lot of learning taking place. So I think Poland really understands what it takes, what it should take, and what must be done. But again, I don't know exactly what is the level of investment and capabilities, which is going to be essentially allowed for this type of defense.
I want to switch gears for a second here. President Macron of France made a comment this week about potentially, if the U.S., let's say, leaves NATO or pulls back from NATO, that they would be willing to extend their nuclear umbrella. Are you seeing any interesting kind of takes on that on the Ukrainian side? I mean, France says a lot of stuff about Ukraine. It's providing material, providing support. Obviously, it's been a mixed bag. But that was a very interesting comment where it's almost like, is Europe going to have to rethink its general defense pact here, if the U.S. continues to kind of pull itself away from protecting that part of the world?
Well, Ukraine is definitely supportive and welcoming of the French initiative. Obviously, within NATO, France always saw itself as sort of this very unique element. And I think they do have a unique standing within NATO as a member country. France is also willing to exert its influence abroad, right? It had a lot of different types of military engagement, special forces engagement in Africa and other parts of the world. So France is willing and able. The question is that actually going to be enough? And is that threat going to be taken seriously by Russians at this point? There are indications, of course, that Russians do want to get to the negotiating table as well.
Sure.
But obviously they want to do it on their own terms without really considering what Ukraine wants and needs. So I think it's an open question. And the situation is developing very rapidly. I mean, we're seeing each 24 hours brings a brand new policy and a brand new policy, foreign policy surprise.
Right.
unmanned systems will not be able to fully replace many manned requirements, and vice versa.
If you can build a bunch of autonomous low-cost boats, let's call them $50,000 to $250,000 a piece, I mean, it gives a bunch of smaller countries an ability to exert power or defend themselves that maybe, a generation ago, the only way we thought you could do this is with an aircraft carrier, right?
They don't put very expensive sensors. They don't put very expensive equipment on it. In fact, Russians have grudgingly accepted and acknowledged that Ukrainian USVs are ultimately a Starlink terminal surrounded by this floating trough.
Thanks for listening to the Drone Wars podcast. Each week, we bring you fascinating conversations with leaders shaping the future of air, sea, land, and space technologies. Catch new episodes every Tuesday wherever podcasts can be found. Until then, we'll see you next time.